one of the biggest things that I think is the best thing that I will tell all young people is you need to learn how to shut the hell up. Because
that's interesting. Why?
Because you learn more when you listen, not when you're talking.
So did you have any fears moving across the country, coming on board, not knowing anything? Did you have any fears at all?
My biggest fear is being average. And so I knew that if I stayed in the same spot of the people that I was hanging around with, or the kind of just the mentality that I had back home, it was, I have to go and I have to learn something, or this is the way things are going to be for 30 years. And that fear was what drove me out.
Treading water is the same as drowning to people like you and me. You better start swimming. Welcome to I'm the One podcast. I'm your host, Robb Green. Okay, Joshua, once upon a time, I met you. You were 22 years old, early May of 2022, and you're a young, hippie-looking, no mustache kind of kid, and interviewed you, and a couple people on the team had interviewed you and said, you got to interview this guy, Joshua. I think you were in the Midwest, some flyover state. I can't remember if it was Kentucky or Ohio at the time, and I interviewed you. You're in your car on a break, if I remember right, interviewed you. And I was impressed, offered you a job. He said, I'm coming out Sunday. I'm packing my stuff. I'm moving out Sunday. And I was like, that's Mother's Day. You may not want to do that. And I might want to wait till Monday to come on out. And I remember you drove across the country with your stuff, moved out here for the job, came to work for the team. And you rented a room in some lady's house from Airbnb. Is that correct?
Yep. Rented it out, and it was an interesting situation, that's for sure.
All right. Well, I mean, I think you're the epitome. You're 22 at the time when you did this.
Yep.
You're the epitome of a quick start, throw it against the wall, see what happens kind of guy. You found us through a job posting we had. I think it was a drunk application process. You were applying to a bunch of stuff.
It was.
And we called you, and we're like, and everybody was impressed with you. We're like, this kid's just going to run through walls and try to figure things out. And now you're a much wiser 24 years old. You've been here for almost a year and a half, tons of experience, and you're going to go back home, take care of your family, got some medical things to take care of. So today I wanted to talk about kind of the progress you've made, the changes in your life, mindset, things like that, since you've been able to work with us here, and things you've learned and over the last year and a half. I think it's great to get a young person's perspective on this, because I think you're a completely different guy, not just mentally, but looks-wise. Came out here with long, straight hair.
Oh, man.
No mustache. Cleaned that up. Yeah, it was great. So I just want to set the stage for that and talk to you a little bit about, what's been the experience the last year and a half for you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. It's been obviously great working here. And I think one of the biggest things for me coming out here, when I first came out here, was I didn't know anything. Not a single thing.
Oh, we knew that when you coming in too, by the way. This kid doesn't know much, but we're going to teach him. He's eager to learn and willing to run through brick walls.
Yeah, and that's, I think, for any young person that's kind of lost in the world, because that's how I kind of felt when I was back home. I just graduated college about a year ago, worked at DHL and Amazon, and a bunch of different other Home Depot, a bunch of different odd jobs here and there. And so basically, I didn't know what I want to do with my life, and so I kind of got fed up. I kind of hit this wall almost in a way, and I think a lot of young people have this where they want something more for themselves, but they don't know how to get there. And so I think the biggest thing for me actually was I was sitting there and I was scrolling through Twitter, and I was scrolling through just different social media apps, and I can't remember exactly who it was. I want to say I think it was Belmar.
Luke Belmar?
Yeah, Luke Belmar, and he was talking about finding somebody who you can learn from.
Great advice.
That's the biggest thing, is that because somebody else has done what you want to do in the world, or they can at least open up a path for you to kind of get you. It may not be the same exact thing, but to at least learn business and things like that. Because I've thrown my hand at the wall at different types of businesses before. I tried to do a hemp business, and I tried to do NFTs when those were really big, try to hop on that wave, but it's a little bit too late with that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing coming out here was, I don't care what I have to do. I'm going to work as hard as possible, because that's one thing that growing up, having a hard work ethic, people always recognize the people that work hard. And so if you work hard to a point where they can't not recognize you, to where they're like, oh, this guy, he's in here, 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. and nobody else is. That's kind of, I need to get this guy in a little bit more projects, or, try to find him a way to work, because you can't teach work ethic. I think it's really hard to do that. And so that was kind of like my silver bullet in the gun coming in, was I'm just going to work hard. I didn't know anything about e-commerce, didn't know anything about, before coming here, I really didn't know anything about computers at all either. I had pretty much, I came
How the heck did we give you a job?
I was a good salesman at the time.
Yeah.
That's what.
Well, what made you decide to make the move? Why us? I mean, obviously you had other opportunities. You could have gone a lot of different ways. What about it intrigued you to move halfway across the country?
Honestly, it was the interview that I had with you when you were in your backyard.
Okay.
And so I could tell a lot. Obviously a lot of other interviews that I had were kind of normal interviews, and it was, white wall and person was dressed up in a nice tie. But when I was interviewing with you, you were like in just a normal shirt. It wasn't anything too crazy, kind of something like you're wearing right now. It wasn't like suit and tie or anything like that, which I liked. I hate the corporate look, I should say. And then I noticed that you also had an amazing landscape in your background. And I was like, man, this guy, I can tell he's got it going on. I can tell he's done what I want to do, and he's proved that he's done what I want to do. Because a lot of the social media gurus out there, they think, or they tell you what they think they know, but they haven't done it actually.
It's true.
And because they just want clicks.
Yeah.
And so, and the other part of it was Riley, one of your daughters, came up and she ran up to you and she was like, hey, I need help with my homework. And you basically told her, you're like, hey, I'm doing this right now, but I'll come help you afterwards. And so right there, I knew, one, good businessman, and two, good father too. Okay. Because growing up, I think a lot of the fathers that I've seen I have a stepdad and I have a dad too. And both of them were not really into the whole education part of kind of like helping me out with that. It was more so my mom that was doing that. And it's not a knock on them, but it's just, I didn't really have that to where my dad would, take the time out to help me with my homework. It was, he would help me out with baseball, help me out with sports or whatever. But just if it wasn't really what he wanted to do or kind of what he wanted to help me grow with, it was like, all right, your mom could do that. And so that was kind of something that I noticed is no matter what it was, just right there, I was like, man, this guy's different. So that was kind of the biggest factor for me. And then the question that you had asked me too was, you showed me this video, and the video was basically you trying to get other people for other brands and different things like that, and showing off like the crazy extreme side of kind of the YouTube ads, and you were trying to gain people's attention. And I don't know if you remember what I said, but I was like, yeah, that's ass. Yeah. And that was the first.
It was supposed to be a parody of all the gurus that were out there, with the idea that we were going to tell them the truth of what it's really like to have an e-commerce business, and hopefully get people's attention, maybe to come work here. Like, hey, this is the reality of owning and operating, several e-commerce brands, not just the fancy cars and that kind of stuff, which, is great too. Yeah. But a lot of that is, rented cars and empty promises, I think. So, yeah. And you gave me your honest opinion on it. And I was already sold on you from, I think Ryan had already interviewed you. And so I was already sold on that. But so you make the move, you come out here, you do what I tell everybody to do, by the way. Find somebody who's already living the life you want, and then find a way to add value to them so that they have to continue to, work with you. Yeah. And so I think you did that. You came out, and then what happened?
So first off, I was staying in an Airbnb with these kind of crazy people, and they were it was definitely interesting, but also I remember talking to you, and you were like, you need to find an apartment fast. you need to find a way out of there. And so we were kind of talking about, do I want to live far away from here, or do I want to live close or anything like that? And then so I ended up finding an apartment complex right across the street from here. And so I was able to walk to work, and it saved me money on gas at the time. Gas was like $5 a gallon here, which was crazy. But yeah, and then I just started coming into work, and the project that initially what I was on was one of the e-commerce brands that we have is Uniquely. And so that was kind of, it put me into the mud right away because I didn't know what I was doing really. And then luckily we had a good team around me to kind of help me and kind of work with me, set goals and different things like that. Because one of the things that I had no clue about was organization or any type of like KPIs or anything like that. And so going through here, it was learning the different ways of just how business runs too, because when you work in a DHL or you're working in like an Amazon or anything like that, you don't really get to, and you're just the worker, you don't really understand like business meetings. You don't understand anything like that. So you have to learn how to conduct yourself in a way too, to where one of the biggest things that I think is the best thing that I will tell all young people is you need to learn how to shut the hell up. because
that's interesting. Why?
Because you learn more when you listen, not when you're talking. And that's one of the biggest things is everybody was using these buzzwords, and I was like, what's that? I just started writing everything down, and I was starting to research everything. But instead of me being like, oh, hey, what's this? Oh, hey, what's this? You sit there and you learn and you listen to everybody and kind of what their roles are in the company. And then you can kind of pick out what questions to ask what people. So instead of me going to ask Ryan, or, you know, he was kind of more so like marketing, different things like that. I wouldn't go ask him an operational question. I would go ask Jenny or somebody like that, because she was the one who was going to be able to help me out the most. And so kind of just learning the ins and outs of the company is kind of like the first thing that I would say was it was kind of like the initial thing. And then you can find a role in that company for yourself, or you can make a role for yourself almost in that way. And then so from Uniquely, that kind of moved over to social media, and I started reaching out to influencers, started doing different things like that. And then from there, basically just went up to having different roles within the company, whether it be sending replacement parts or just doing the little things, being a utility player almost in a way. And then eventually when a spot did open up for me for a different type of project with the Robb bingo stuff, that was my first kind of like real project that I owned myself. And that was something that it gave me a lot of confidence, because one, I had learned a lot from seeing everybody else and how they operate within their projects. And then I can see, you know, this is what I got to do. I got to be more organized in this and that. But being able to really run kind of like the show in one project, that was like, okay, I kind of made it a little bit. That's where I wasn't necessarily so nervous coming in here. I was just like, I trusted myself, trusted the confidence that I had, and really just came in and did the work. And then, like you said, just be so recognizable that you have to give somebody a spot almost in a way.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing kind of like what you've been doing over the last year with us, year and a half. What would you say your biggest takeaways have been? I mean, you already mentioned the one about, not speaking up during the meetings, but what else has been, would you say it's mindset? Would you say it's your behaviors? What do you think you've gotten the most out of, as a young guy coming in to an established business? It's, still small and still kind of a startup. What have you learned the most?
I honestly think that hierarchy is one thing that I've learned, because when Oase was here, he was somebody who he sees you as what I saw Oase to be. And I knew that there were steps to getting to where you're at. And so Oase, he still has a lot of things to learn before he gets to your level. But I think knowing that to where I could go rely on Oase, because you're busy. You have meetings all the time. Oase had a little bit more free time. So I knew if I want to get the most out of the knowledge and the most out of my questions, I would be able to go and talk to Oase. I could talk to Oase for an hour. That would be a little bit different. I might only get 5 minutes with you. And so he learned the things that I wanted to know already from you. So it's basically just like a trickle down effect. And so from there, I think that accelerated my growth. Instead, if I was having to wait for you to be like, oh, I've got 5 minutes with you. Oh, I'm going to try to learn as much as I can in 5 minutes, but I can't ask the questions necessarily is what I want to learn.
Gotcha.
And then I would also say the other thing one of the biggest things that I learned here is once you have shut the hell up and you've learned enough, don't be afraid to speak, because once you get past that kind of certain point of where you've learned, you have this confidence that you've built up. And then if you don't speak in a meeting, and that could be a great idea, you're doing a disservice to the business, and you're doing a disservice to yourself, because what's the whole reason why you're out here?
Yeah.
What's the biggest reason? It's you want to make an impact while you're here, and you want to be able to have people, when they first see you, they want to see the growth that you have. And I think obviously with my appearance too, I think that was another big thing for me, is I noticed that when I had long hair and different things, even when I would go out to like, a bar and grill, or I would go out to a restaurant or anything like that, I've gotten treated differently based on my appearance now. And so me cutting my hair and me having different, mustache now, or I had a goatee at the time, I think. But I think having that, even when I came in right after I cut my hair, Monica and you both said, you just move different. Like you're just moving different now.
Yeah.
And obviously I started getting into the gym more, and that's probably the third thing is what I would say, especially as, for anybody, but especially as a young man too, is a lot of people, they talk about like mental health and different things like that. And one thing that I've really learned is a lot of that can be fixed by just going to the gym, because when you're sitting there and you sit, and play video games or whatever, and you sit there or you just watch Netflix or anything like that, there's things in the back of your mind that you know you could be doing to improve your life, but you're just too lazy to do it. And so I think seeing you and how good of shape you are and how Awais he started working out and just the different people, and Elizabeth too, she was somebody that was having the F45 classes and different things like that. So it makes you kind of feel bad when you're not working out. It's like, man, I'm kind of the weak link here. And then so once you start working out, you feel better. You start learning more about health, and obviously people treat you differently based on the way you look. So I think those three things were the biggest things that I've learned here.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on that, I think it's really hard. I think, well, first of all, I think that having physical strength helps with mental strength and also helps with confidence. It's really hard to lack confidence if you're physically strong. If you're physically fit and you're physically strong, I think that supports your confidence, which as an entrepreneur, that's the most important thing for us to protect. And I think that allows you the ability to speak up a little bit more because you have more confidence. So how did you kind of balance, being new to the industry, young, and then the desire to actually speak up? So the humility, but balancing that with asserting yourself. Because you said, shut the hell up, but then you also said, well, when you get a chance, I got to speak up. How did you decide when was the right time to speak up and when was the right time to kind of listen?
Well, the main part of when I was like, you need to speak up was when we would be in meetings and I would sit there and you would ask a question or, Ryan would ask a question and everybody would just kind of sit there and not say anything. And then you would be like, okay, I've got the answer. And then you would say the answer. I was like, I knew that. And it's like, oh my gosh, like why didn't I sit there and why didn't I speak up? Because then once you get into that kind of mentality of like, I know these answers and if I'm not saying them, it's just then at that point it's on me because I don't have the confidence to say anything. But beforehand, when you would ask a question, when I first got here, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not going to, I don't want to look stupid, but at the same time, there is a time and a place to ask questions because you knew that I didn't know anything either. So you weren't going to sit here and be like, oh, he's stupid. But at the same time, if it was a just completely out of the ballpark question in a meeting or something like that, it just throws the entire mojo of the conversation or kind of might take something off track. So I think the biggest thing was when I started knowing the answers and you were answering them or somebody else was answering them, but I knew it first before they did, then that was when I knew I had to.
So that gave you the confidence to start speaking up.
Yeah.
So one thing I feel like a lot of people at every age is that make their own decisions for them, or make decisions for them, I should say, is fear. So did you have any fears moving across the country, coming on board, not knowing anything? Did you have any fears at all? Or, you've got a lot of confidence. So you were just like, I'm just going to figure this out.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the other way around for me. I think my biggest fear is being average. And so I knew that if I stayed in the same spot of the people that I was hanging around with or the kind of just the mentality that I had back home, it was I have to go and I have to learn something or this is the way things are going to be for 30 years. And that fear was what drove me out. And so it was almost, I as soon as we got off the interview, I was like, yeah, I'll move out. Like it was not a second question in my mind because I just knew that I'm a religious guy, so I would say like I feel like God put that right in my head and he was like, this is where you have to be. And not a lot of, other people aren't religious, whatever. But I think for me, it kind of just clicked in my head and I was like, this is where I'm going. And it doesn't matter who tells me what, because I had people before I was leaving, they're like, you're really going out to Phoenix? They're like, you don't have any friends or family out there? I have nobody out here.
Sure.
And so coming out here was, I remember driving and it was like 11 o'clock at night and I'm sitting there listening to the radio or listening to my music and stuff. And I was like, man, I kind of, I hope this is the right decision. Like this is a pretty big jump, but also at the same time, I knew that I just had a feeling. That's the best thing. I just had a feeling.
So your fear of being average was greater than your fear of it not working out.
Yes.
And you 100%. Made the decision, you came out, you've learned a lot. What mistakes do you think you've made as you come out and started this career?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think some of the mistakes that I had made early on was thinking I had accomplished something before the job was actually done. So because a lot of the tasks that I had done before was task A, task B. You get task A done, task B gets done. But in this type of business, it's like task A might have 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A. And just because you get 1A and 2A done, that doesn't mean the entire task is done. So then I'd be like, oh my gosh, I got this done. And then in reality, I was like, not really, because the results weren't there. And so I think that was kind of a mistake, was almost not, I don't want to say not seeing it through to the end, but you think you're done before you were. And then that was probably one of the biggest things. And then I think another mistake that I learned from a lot was when I did gain confidence, sometimes I got a little bit too big for my britches, I think. And so that was another thing. And that kind of goes back to the humility part. It just it humbles yourself to where it's like, you're not where you think you are yet. And so, you have learned, but you're making too big of a bound. And so I think that was another thing where, either I try to take on so many projects at once and I was like, oh, I can do it. I've learned so much. But in reality, you only have so much time in the day and you can't do everything for everybody. And that was another big thing for me, was saying no to people that came up to me and were like, hey, I need you to do this, or hey, I need you to do that. And it wasn't like they were just trying to pawn a project off. They actually did need my help. And I was just like, yeah, I want to help everybody. But I think, that was one of the biggest things that I learned too. And then, I had a conversation with you and you were like, tell them to Google it. Did they Google it? 3 W's. That was the big 3 W's. And that was something that it took me a while to learn that, I think, because I think naturally when you come out to a place, you don't really know anybody. You become a people pleaser, even if you weren't a people pleaser beforehand, because you want people to like you. And 2, you don't want anybody to think that they can't go to you for something.
Yeah, the 3 W's. What do you know? What does it mean? What do you think you should do about it? Huge framework for our company. You left one off, by the way.
Okay.
So I think there was one that was even a bigger mistake than all of those combined.
Okay.
So I want to say it was earlier this year, end of last year. You were looking a little tired, and I was like, "Man, you look tired. Everything okay? What's going on? You not sleeping well?"
Yep.
You remember what happened? You're like, "I got a part-time job," and I was like,
"Yeah,
what? What do you mean you got a part-time job? Doing what? What were you doing?"
I was working at Planet Fitness. I was going to work at Planet Fitness.
You were working at Planet Fitness at night.
Yep.
After working your day job.
Yep.
And making very little money.
Very little money.
What happened?
I became lethargic. I became I don't want to say I was very slow, but the energy that you have in the day to get tasks done, I just realized that the tasks that I was getting done took me longer to get done. So, beforehand I could get done in 20 minutes, and instead it was like my brain would wander, my eyes would kind of wander, and it's like you just kind of go into that zone out mode a little bit more, and then it takes away from the amount of work that you can do in the job that you're here for.
I couldn't believe that you had made that decision to go work some crappy job making like borderline minimum wage.
Yeah.
What did I say to you as soon as you told me that?
You need to quit that job.
And? Do you remember what we did?
Didn't we look at my pay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said, hey, man, it's more expensive to live out here in Phoenix, and I'm living by myself in a nice apartment. And I said, great, let's go to the whiteboard.
Yeah. And
we drew out, and you wrote out your expenses, and then what did I say? And I said, man, your expenses are higher than I thought. Student loans, rent's higher than I thought it was.
You need to get a roommate.
I said, did you listen? No. Then I said, what else did I say to you?
I'm trying to think.
I said, you got to quit your job.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I said, how much do you think you'll make at your job? And I raised your salary as much as you were going to make at the job.
Yep. That was exactly
that day.
What happened. Yeah.
Because I was like, this is stupid. Whatever you're going to make, I think it was like 12 grand or something like that. We figured out part-time for the year.
Yep.
Stop that nonsense. Quit that job, and we'll just raise your salary.
Yeah. Yeah, that was true. And I remember, now that you say that, I remember when that happened, I was like, wait, what? That was my initial reaction. You were like, boom, done.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was so easy. And that's
obvious.
That's another thing too. I think when having the mentality that I had when I was home was a small mindset mentality. And so coming out, my mom, perfect example, she worked 2 jobs, did a side business and then also worked at the airlines for a little bit, for 26 years. And seeing other people and the way that they level up is part-time job, because that's the only way that they know how.
Yeah, they trade their labor for money.
Yeah, and so when you get out here, and I had that type of small town mindset, it was, okay, first things first, if I need more money, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a part-time job.
Sure.
Instead of what I should have done was I should have went into your office.
Yeah.
And I should have talked to you and be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm going through right now.
Sure.
And, obviously with how quickly you reacted to that was immediately, it hit me. It was like, you're not in that small town anymore. There's you have other options and you have other people around you that want to see you succeed, especially when you succeed, they succeed too. So,
well, and I think it ties into like a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset also. At least that's how I think about it. It's like, all right, well, this makes no sense to me. Like, I know you need to make more money, so let's raise your pay so that you can make more money, feel comfortable, not be stressed out, and not have to go work at a job that adds no value. And I said, if you're going to do anything on the side ever, it needs to be something that compounds. Like, go learn AI. Yeah. Go do something, but go work at Planet Fitness is no value to you.
Yeah.
Save your $9 a month at Planet Fitness or something like that. That ain't it, buddy.
Yeah.
That ain't the gig.
Tough. That was tough. But
so you only worked there for like 2 weeks?
A week and a half.
Yeah. And then quit. Thank God you told me then.
Yeah. No.
If you waited any longer, it would have been bad. You'd been there for months.
Yeah, that was
crazy.
Yeah, that was not my best move since I've been.
Hey, listen, listen, we all learn.
Yeah,
sometimes you got to do it. That's a very low friction lesson to be learned, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with going that route for a lot of people. To be honest with you, not everybody's going to have the same situation where their employer can just make a change for them, right? They might have restrictions. So going out and I respect a lot of what you did because you're like, listen, I got to go solve it. I got a problem. How do I know how to solve this? I know how to work hard. I'm just go get a job and work hard, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I respect that a lot. I mean, I think that's the right answer in a lot of cases for a lot of people. The only advice I would give is that if you're going to do that, do something that stacks, something that compounds, something that learn something while you're doing it that's long-term value for yourself so that you can add to your skill sets. Sharpen your saw. Don't just go and trade, your back.
Yeah.
Don't just trade your labor for an hourly wage or something like that if you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you've got the ability to get something else, which you do, then go do that and stack it on top.
Yeah, and I think that was really the time when my mindset flipped. That was when my mindset flipped from scarcity to abundance. And then we also talked about the amount of time that it takes. How much money do I make in an hour? And what is really worth it for me to do?
Yeah.
And then breaking that down from that type of mindset is like, oh, is it really worth me going out and dropping these boxes off, or can I have a guy do it that's already here and he can just drop them off on his way home?
Yeah. Or we've got an overseas team, maybe that makes less money per hour than you do, right? And maybe it's easy. You got to get in that mindset of, hey, what can I delegate? Who do we have on the team that has this? That may be better than I am at this, or equivalent to my skills at this, and it's less money, and then I can free up my time to go use on something that's more impactful for the business.
Yep.
And I think that's where I've seen you grow a lot over the last year, is really changing that mindset about like, hey, I know I can do it and I want to do it, but it doesn't have to be me all the time. And that's hard to do when you come from the background. I grew up in the Midwest where, you just do things. You just get it done. Like, there's no excuses. You just get up and you go get your work done. You don't cry about it. You just do it. Put your head down and get it done, and don't complain about it.
Yep.
And that is an interesting situation, be able to change your mindset around that and say, like, I still can apply that, but I just want to work on higher value activities, not the low value activities. And then how can I outsource those low value activities to somebody else or delegate it to somebody we have on the team?
Yeah.
So I think that's been a big growth opportunity for you.
Yeah, no. And I think one of the biggest reasons why I came out here too was to learn how to run a business myself, because I think that's any person that has drive, they don't want anybody to be their boss, no matter if you're the greatest boss in the world,
sure,
which it could be, you could have the greatest boss in the world, but also at the same time, you want to run the show yourself.
Sure.
And I think that's something where, delegation is probably the biggest thing, because like you said, you can't do everything yourself.
Right.
And if you want to be able to actually scale a business and not just keep it at this, making $10,000 a month, but if you want to make $20,000 to $50,000 to $100,000 a month, you have to delegate, and you have to get you have to get other people to help you out with things that you're not good at too, because why sit there and be frustrated with things that you don't want to do? And, kind of all that culmination of just those stacking tips or stacking advice, I think that's what's really going to propel me forward for my future when I do end up having my own business.
There are 0 one-person billion-dollar businesses. None that I know of. There are no one-person billion-dollar businesses. They don't exist. And the reason they don't exist is because it's almost impossible to get there. Even with AI and everything that's advancing, you still need other people. You need to build a team, which everybody starts off, I shouldn't say everybody, most people start off as a solopreneur. And you wear all the hats, and you're doing accounting and marketing and supply chain and everything that's involved. And then as soon as you can, and I made a big mistake. I didn't hire fast enough early on. I was doing too much. should have hired earlier on. Then you hire the things you're not good at, and you have somebody else, you find them to do it, and you start building a team. And the dream is you build where I think we are now, we're getting close to what I would call a self-managing company. And then the last stage you want to get to is like a self-multiplying company, which we're not there yet. But that is the idea that it doesn't require me to be managed and to multiply without me. And that's where I want to get to, is having self-multiplying companies where I'd like to be involved and help and add. But even when I'm not there, the company's growing and multiplying itself.
No,
and that's 100%. Where I think is, I mean, you mentioned Oasis, he's gone on his own. He was here for a couple of years and he went on his own and started his own business, which I'm super proud of. I think that one thing a lot of people get stuck on, especially people that try to be mentors and try to encourage people to go out on their own and start their own business, is they want to hold on too tight to they don't want to let people go. Yeah. And I don't really want to let people go. I mean, selfishly, I want them to stay, and I've invested time and energy and wanted you guys to keep learning. But the reality is, that's not really being a mentor. That's just holding people back. And so the ideal situation is and I like this from either from a hierarchy perspective or from going out on your own. You can't actually move up until you replace yourself. So if you're in a hierarchy and you want to go to the next level, you need to be able to replace yourself with somebody, either somebody or automation, so you can go up to the next level and take on more tasks. Yep. And you got to do it again. And if you really want to go out on your own, I mean, ideally, you'd want to be able to replace yourself so that you understand, when I go on my own, how do I take this skills that I've learned and apply them to a business?
Yeah. And I also think it's one of the most disrespectful things that you can do is if all the time and energy that you put into me and it just all goes for naught. It goes away too, because it's like at that point, it's like, well, you put a lot of energy and you put a lot of mentorship into me. And I think the best thing that you could see me succeed.
100%.
Then at that point, you're sitting there, you're like, he listened to me. He actually listened, and
It's interesting. I've had this conversation with a few friends about this. It's a weird feeling, because it is personally for myself and for the business. It's sad to see people leave, right? Because I care about you and I care about other people that have moved on. But the reality is, it's also like a proud dad kind of moment where you're like, oh, my little baby's kind of grown up a little bit. Now he's ready to walk, and now he's ready to go out and go off to college, right?
Yeah.
So there is an aspect of that is a lot of pride. And it's strange. I've got two daughters. It's very strange because seeing them succeed or seeing, team members succeed, I'm more proud of that than me succeeding. It's really interesting. As I've gotten older, it kind of shifts a little bit and it changes. And it's like, I'd rather see, I like to succeed, but I get more pride out of seeing somebody else succeed, that I've had an ability to contribute to that success than I do even when I succeed.
Well, I think maybe a part of that is that you can do it. You've proved it to yourself that you can do it, but seeing other people do what you can do it's just a totally different feeling. And obviously I'm not a dad yet, hopefully not for a little bit, but it's that feeling of being able to sit there and say, they listened to me. They took it's almost like you're imparting some of you onto them.
Sure.
And so being able to see that growth of how you kind of attach yourself to them and then seeing how they do their own spin on it or whatever they take and be successful with. That's, I can imagine that's a really good feeling.
It is. It's a great, great feeling. So what's next for you? Now you're moving on. You're going to go home and take care of some family situation. Moving back tomorrow, actually, driving back tomorrow. What's next for you think?
So I would say that what's next for me is I'm going to obviously, need to be able to pay bills. So have a job.
Planet Fitness again?
Oh, no. I'm going to be, and, depending on where I go, it's either going to be a part-time job so I can work on my own business, because that's obviously the biggest goal that I've had for a really, really long time. Or it's, going to be able to take the skills that I've learned, whether it be through AI or anything online wise, and go travel a little bit. I think that's to be able to get a little bit more experience in my life too, and be able to understand how the world works a little bit more. Whether that be from working on a boat, or it could be going through and it could be going through and just hopping from place to place. But I think with the online skills that I have, I can definitely build up enough money, especially in, countries that aren't as well off as the United States, to where I can afford my lifestyle a little bit more. But my main goal is to be able to have my own business. And I think I found a good business idea based on what we've said, fast moving consumer goods, subscription basis, anything like that. And be able to really build a brand off of that. So I know food isn't your favorite thing. I know
I like food.
It's
not as a business.
Yeah, exactly. But I think so. I have an idea about about going into the food business of a snack. I don't want to give too much away, but
they're gonna copy it.
Yeah, that's what exactly. But yeah, going into the kind of like the food industry a little bit, and because I see a severe lack in healthy options, especially in snacking, and especially for kids or for the fitness industry. It says either high protein, but it's also high in something else.
Sure.
And so if you can really figure out a way to kind of nail that, I think there's a huge market open for that. And I think more and more people are, with the internet and with AI, it's just getting easier to learn. It doesn't take as much energy to learn, because with ChatGPT, there's multiple different ways. You just type something in and it pulls up everything that you want to know. And so obviously people are lazy and they try to learn or do things in the quickest way possible. And I think having that type of mentality of where if somebody can look at my product and they can easily find out everything about it, and there's not, red dye 40 or yellow dye, blue dye, anything like that, then I think that's going to end up making a bigger impact on people on a level that connects with them a little bit more, rather than just throwing a product at the wall and being like, oh yeah, this is just something you're stuffing your face with. I think if you can actually build a brand and be able to have that relationship with your customers, and yeah, I think that's going to be what's next for me within the next 2 years, obviously.
That's exciting. I'm really excited for you to see what happens. Obviously, we're going to stay in touch, and
yeah,
we'll keep in touch, and hopefully we can help you continue on the path and the journey that you're on. And don't get stuck back in Kentucky.
In the abyss.
Don't get sucked back into the black hole. I think you'll bring a lot of value to a lot of. I mean, you've already talked about this before, but all your friends have said like you're a totally different guy.
Yeah,
like a completely different person than you were a year and a half ago, which is awesome, right?
Yeah, and I think the mentality that you always say this: once you think one way, you can't think another way.
It's hard to remember how you used to think.
Yeah, and it's just, and also I think at that same point too, you just realize once you start thinking that way, you're going to a lesser version of yourself. Because at least for me, coming out here, it's brought my mindset and it's elevated my game in a way, physical, health, wealth, relationships, all of those. It's brought my game up, and I'm not somebody who likes to lose. So if you go down, that's considered losing in my eyes. And for me, that's also getting me closer to the fear part of, if I go down, that makes me more average than I was when I came down here. So yeah, I think having that mindset of you can't go back to where you were. Is you may be going back to the same place, but you're not the same person.
No, it's like reading a book a second time. The book hasn't changed, you've changed.
Yep.
So you get something different out of the book.
Yeah.
Right? I think it'll be really interesting to see how your experience is. I think it's going to be completely different than the last time you lived there, because you're different. So you're going to act with people differently. You're going to act with everything differently in that regard. So I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, no, so, I'm excited too.
Anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh man, I think the biggest thing is just go out. If you don't know what you want to do in life, which I did not know what I wanted to do in life. If you don't know what you want to do a lot of things. And that could be, for me, I worked at DHL when I had just graduated college, because I wanted to learn more about supply chain, and I also wanted to make money. So I worked the overnight shift at DHL because it was more money. But then I also learned, hey, I'm losing sleep. And you can't, it's hard to work third shift all the time.
Sure.
And so that was one lesson. And then I didn't want to throw bags, or I didn't want to throw boxes all day. And then so I went to Amazon because I wanted to, learn how Amazon worked, because that's when I really started to get interested in Amazon businesses. And it's like, you hear all this, you make money in your sleep. And that was kind of like what initially got me into thinking about Amazon. And then after that, it was like, man, I really need to go find somebody that's done this, or I really need to go find somebody that knows something about running a business. And that's what led me here. So I think just going out and trying different things and figuring out what you don't like is the best way to figure out what you do like.
Yep. I think that's great advice. I think the biggest thing you did is just made a decision. You took action. You learned, got a feedback loop going. You kept learning, and you're going to continue down that path. So I think that's the biggest thing I would say to all listeners is that I would go out, even if you don't know what you want, try a bunch of different stuff. If you do know what you want, take action too many people let fear get in their way. What if this doesn't work? What if it doesn't happen? What if they don't like me? Whatever it might be, right? Just try and make it happen.
Yep.
I feel like the bar is so low nowadays to get a job. And what I mean by that is most of the people we interview don't put a lot of effort in. And I feel like there's a huge opportunity for people to differentiate themselves in that process and just to go after whatever you want. And if you know what you want, just go take it.
Yeah.
Go try to do it. Add value to somebody, find a way so they can't do anything but hire you and then keep you on. I think that's the best. I think that's the best thing I've learned with you, and it's just confirmed what I already believe. And so I think you've done an excellent job of that. So I appreciate everything you've done for us, and we'll continue, and we'll be friends for a long time, I think.
Yeah, same here. Can't thank you enough.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Take care. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with friends. Visit I'mTheOne.com and ask me anything. And as always, stay curious and never stop becoming the one.